For many years, people have known Bill Gaither not just as a gospel singer, but as a man whose music, words, and presence have reached into the lives of millions. His psalms of faith and joy have lifted spirits across generations, becoming anthems of hope in dark times. For many, he is more than a performer. He is a voice of encouragement, a reminder that even in the most difficult seasons of life, faith can shine like a guiding light. His songs have been both comfort and inspiration, echoing in churches, homes, and hearts, but away from the spotlight. Beyond the cheers of audiences and the applause of fans, Bill has lived a very human story. His private life has been shaped by family, by enduring love, and most profoundly by a marriage that became his greatest blessing. At this stage of his life, however, the public began to see a different side of Bill, not the performer on stage, but the husband navigating heartbreak. Everything changed when his beloved wife, who had stood beside him through victories and struggles alike, was given a devastating diagnosis. For Bill, this news was not just a medical report, it was the kind of moment no husband ever wants to face. The reality of preparing for a farewell far too soon. This is the story of a man who, though celebrated for his hopeful songs, found himself walking through the valley of grief. It is the story of faith stretched to its limits, of love tested by illness, and of a farewell that came earlier than anyone wanted. Yet even in its pain, this story teaches us about love, about legacy, and about the strength that can be found in letting go when the time comes. Some stories rise above the stage, the music, and the applause. The love story of Bill Gaither and his wife is one such tale. Their decades-long marriage was not just personal, it was the heartbeat behind the songs that became the soundtrack. Of faith for millions, and in the shadow of loss. Their story continues to offer lessons that are both heartbreaking and deeply inspiring. Joy had always been a defining part of Bill Gaither's life and music. His performances, whether in small chapels or vast arenas, carried a soul-stirring warmth. Yet behind every note was the hidden foundation of his wife's love. She was not only his closest friend, but also his muse, his anchor, and his source of quiet strength. Fans admired their love story almost as much as his music hit was a public testimony to faith, devotion, and enduring commitment. But everything shifted when word of her illness spread. The diagnosis was heavy. It's one of those life-changing moments where time feels painfully slow and unbearably fast all at once. Once in a single conversation with the doctors, the life they had built together was reshaped. Plans for family gatherings, concerts, and travel were suddenly overshadowed by the reality of illness. For years, Bill had sung about mountaintops and valleys. Now, he found himself in the deepest valley of his life. His faith, which had always been his strength, was tested in ways he had never anticipated. Behind closed doors, nights were filled with silent tears, even as he lifted prayers in front of audiences. Remarkably, despite her physical weakness, his wife continued to encourage him. She urged him to keep singing, to keep giving hope, because that was who he was. And though his songs continued, their meanings deepened. Each lyric carried the raw passion of a man clinging to God while watching the love of his life slowly fade. Every hospital visit, every whispered conversation, every night spent holding her hand while wondering if it might be the last, became sacred moments of farewell. Eventually, the time came when reality could no longer be denied. Bill sat beside her, whispering gratitude for the years they had shared. He told her how her life had touched not only him and their family, but countless people around the world. It was a farewell both heartbreaking and beautiful, the kind that crushes a man, and yet reveals the depth of true love. When the news of her illness spread, the reaction was overwhelming. Letters, prayers, and tributes poured in from around the globe. Churches lifted songs in her honor. Fellow gospel musicians shared how Bill and his wife had touched their own lives. It was as though the world paused to give back the hope that Bill had poured into others for decades. This season became a reminder of truths too important to ignore. The greatest legacy we can leave is love, the relationships we nurture, the people we hold close, and the lives we touch. For Bill, his marriage was his most beautiful song. It's more powerful than anything he ever sang on stage. The second lesson was about faith. Faith does not promise a life free of pain. Instead, it gives us strength to walk through suffering with courage. Bill's journey showed that faith does not erase hardship, but helps us endure it. His was not an easy path. It was filled with questions, long nights, and silent perseverance. Yet real faith, as Bill lived it, is about embracing each moment, knowing tomorrow is never guaranteed. The diagnosis forced them to live with intention, cherishing every laugh, every tear, every shared song. Their story teaches us not to take a single day for granted, to slow down, and to hold our loved ones a little longer. There is beauty even in sorrow, the beauty of a marriage that lasted for decades, the beauty of love that grew stronger in sickness, and the bittersweet beauty of a goodbye spoken with both heartbreak and gratitude. Their story was never about fame or recognition, but about two people who lived and loved faithfully to the very end. That is why it feels timeless today. Bill Gaither walks forward without the woman who shaped so much of his life, but he does not walk alone. Her memory lives in every song, every prayer, every melody that flows through him. The legacy they built together of faith, family, and music continues to uplift millions. Even though she is no longer physically present, she remains alive in his music, in his heart, and in the lives of all those touched by their journey. This chapter does not end their story. Instead, it reveals that faith is stronger than grief. Love is more powerful than illness. And farewells are not the end, but a transition. Their love began humbly, long before the world knew Bill's name. Two young dreamers came together, bound by faith, music, and a desire to build something greater than themselves. Over time, their union grew into a powerful testimony of love lived in both private and public. She was not only his partner in marriage, but also his sounding board and his inspiration. Many of Bill's songs were shaped by their shared joys and struggles. Together, they raised children, built a family, and touched countless lives beyond the stage. Their marriage became proof that true love could endure the test of time, the diagnosis. However, was the moment life shifted forever. One quiet visit to the doctor changed everything. Shock was their first reaction, followed by denial, and then the desperate hope for a miracle. But eventually, reality settled in. Travel and concerts gave way to medical visits. Dreams of the future shrank under the weight of the present. Yet Bill never left her side. His joyful songs became prayers whispered in the silence of sleepless nights. This season became his ultimate test of faith. For a man who had sung for decades about hope, it was now time to live that hope in the hardest of ways. In private, he asked the questions so many have asked: why her? Why now? What possible purpose could this suffering serve? Even in her weakness, his wife reminded him to keep singing, to keep believing. And so his songs took on a new depth. They became raw prayers, honorable and filled with longing. Eventually, the moment of farewell came. It was quiet, tender, and sacred. Bill sat by her bedside, holding her hand, whispering words of love and gratitude. Together, they looked back on their life with thankfulness, even as they faced the hardest goodbye. It was painful beyond words, yet also peaceful in the knowledge that their love had endured to the very end. The gospel community and beyond responded with an outpouring of love. Tributes, prayers, and memories flooded in, reminding Bill that he was not alone. His wife's influence reached far beyond their family. Her life had touched countless others. Even in her absence, her legacy endures. And perhaps this is the greatest lesson, that love is the most powerful legacy we can leave. That faith is not about avoiding storms, but finding strength in them. And that illness does not weaken love, but often strengthens it. Together, Bill and his wife left behind more than music. They left behind a living testimony of love, sacrifice, and devotion. Even now, Bill honors her in every performance, every song, and every word of encouragement. Their story did not end with goodbye, it continues in a different way. To the world, he is still a gospel legend. But to those who know his journey, he is also a husband who loved with honesty, who grieved with courage, and who showed that even in heartbreak, faith and love endure. Ultimately, this is not only a story of loss, it is a story of grace in farewell, of faith that holds even through questions, and of love that refuses to be destroyed by illness. Bill Gaither's journey reminds us to cherish our loved ones, to treasure every moment, and to believe in the enduring power of love. It is a story that will inspire 4 generations to come. Bill Gaither's story is not just about a man who made music. It is about a man who lived every note he sang. Long before audiences filled arenas, before albums became classics, and before the world knew his name, Bill's life was shaped by love and faith. Meeting his wife was the beginning of everything, 2 people with dreams, bound together by music and a shared devotion to God. What started in simplicity grew into a partnership that would last for decades, inspiring not only their family, but millions of people around the world. Together, Bill and his wife created more than just a marriage. They built a life of service, of art, and of devotion. They raised children, nurtured friendships, and stood as an example of what faith in action looks like. She was not just the person by his side at concerts or events, she was the heartbeat of his ministry, the quiet force behind the music. Many of Bill's most beloved songs were born out of their shared experiences, reflecting the laughter, struggles, and sacred moments of their journey. But life, as it so often does, brought a turning point. The day of her diagnosis felt like the world had stopped. The words spoken in that quiet doctor's office seemed to echo endlessly. A disease with no simple cure. A road that would be marked with suffering, and an ending no one was ready to face. First came shock, then denial, then the fragile hope that perhaps the doctors were mistaken, that somehow a miracle would intervene. Yet slowly, reality settled in. Their daily life shifted in ways both large and small. Tours were rearranged, concerts postponed, and simple family plans replaced by hospital visits. Nights once filled with laughter and music turned into long hours of prayer and worry. Yet through it all, Bill stayed by her side, his faith shaken but not broken. The man who had sung for years about valleys and mountaintops now found himself in the deepest valley of all. And still, his wife, even in her weakness, was his strength. She encouraged him to keep singing, to keep sharing hope with others. It was who he was, and she would not let him forget that. So he sang. His voice carried through concert halls, but behind every lyric was a deeper truth. His songs became prayers raw, unpolished, and filled with the aching honesty of a man holding on to God while holding on to his wife's hand. The farewell, when it came, was quiet, sacred, and devastating. Bill sat beside her, whispering gratitude for a lifetime shared. He told her she had changed his life and the lives of countless others. Their goodbye was not filled with fear, but with love, spoken softly between 2 people who had walked hand in hand through everything. It was the most difficult moment of his life. No music could ease the pain of losing the woman who had been his partner, muse, and greatest blessing. And yet, there was also peace in that moment. The peace of knowing their love had endured until the very end. When the world learned of her illness, later of her passing, the response was overwhelming. Friends, fans, and fellow musicians reached out with letters, prayers, and tributes. Churches sang their songs in her honor. Gospel singers spoke about the ways Bill and his wife had shaped their own journeys. Social media filled with words of comfort and memories from people touched by their story. In his darkest hour, Bill found himself surrounded by the very hope he had given to so many. Her influence lived on not only in the family they built, but also in the music, in the memories, and in the lives she touched without ever seeking recognition. The outpouring of love reminded Bill that his story was not one of sorrow alone, but of legacy. Together, he and his wife had left behind something eternal, and this is where the lessons of their journey shine most brightly. The first is that love is the greatest legacy. Long after the music ends and the applause fades, it is love that remains. Bill's life with his wife was his most beautiful song, the song of faith, sacrifice, and devotion lived out daily. The second lesson is about faith itself. Faith does not erase suffering, nor does it promise an easy path. Instead, faith gives us the courage to walk through storms with hope, to carry pain with strength, to believe in God's goodness, even when life feels unbearably heavy. Bill's story shows us that faith is not the absence of questions, but the strength to keep walking despite them. It is not about escaping suffering, but about enduring it with grace. It is about finding meaning in every tear, every whispered prayer, every small act of love, today. As Bill Gaither continues his journey without the woman who shaped so much of it, her presence is still felt. Every melody he sings carries a trace of her memory. Every concert is an unspoken tribute. Every prayer is a reminder that though she may be gone, she is not lost. She lives on in their children, in their family, in the music, and in the millions of hearts touched by their story. This is not a story defined by grief, but by faith stronger than grief. Not a story of illness, but of love deeper than illness. Not a story of endings, but of farewells that lead to new beginnings. Bill and his wife's journey is a timeless reminder that the true measure of a life is not found in achievements or accolades, but in the love we give and the faith we hold there. Love was not destroyed by illness, it was refined by it. Their marriage was not weakened by the diagnosis, it was strengthened. Their legacy is not only in the songs Bill wrote, but in the way they lived faithfully together until the very end. And so, as the story of Bill Gaither continues, it carries with it the echoes of a love story that has outlived loss. It reminds us to hold close the people we love, to live each moment with purpose, and to believe that even in the hardest goodbyes, there is always hope. Because in the end, the real song is not the one sung on stage, but the one lived out in love. On that song, Bill and his wife wrote together beautifully.